Good morning, everybody. It's Mari-Lyn Harris here with Creating an Impactful Legacy, and I'll be live streaming on YouTube shortly. And today, my guest is
Good morning, everybody. It's
Mark
Mari-Lyn
Raleigh,
Harris here.
and we'll be talking to you about some of the things that he thinks is really important now, that how businesses need to really pivot and how they're doing business. And he believes that it should be people first. And so I'd like to hear more about what he thinks about and what he's up to and how he's going to do that. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mari-Lyn.
How you doing today?
Fantastic.
Good, good. I know you're in a nice warm weather. Probably can't quite do sun tanning, but I mean, I'm sure that your weather's very nice down Southern California.
Yeah, so, we don't get much reason to complain down here. But,
yeah. So, Mark, tell us a little bit about why you believe people first, and why you think that, and just introduce yourself and what you've been up to doing that.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done 14 startups in my days, and I think most people who say they're serial entrepreneur, it's because usually the first one went well. So that was the case. Coming out of the Army in my early 20s, got involved in a startup, and we grew up to 800 employees and took it public. So kind of had that startup dream of, the fun ride up. We also built some character when the market corrected itself a few years later, but really got hooked in the startup world ever since. And recently kind of doubled down on that journey. Last year in 2020, we created a venture studio, which is a venture studio is a mix of kind of a venture capitalist and an incubator. So we're looking to, come up with the best ideas, knowing how to put the capital to place and deploy it, but also having awesome teams that, take these ideas to fruition probably more rapidly and more successful than most people. That's the goal, at least.
So how did you come to the idea about people first in your incubator or in your business?
Sure. Yeah, I think we've one of the things we looked at in the incubator is saying, what is going to be the differentiator for companies in the next 10, 20 years. The companies we're building now, we're hopefully going to have that that kind of future ahead of them. And I think that we're reinventing businesses right now. I think the pandemic just brought that along, but I think in a lot of ways we're on the slide of technology. 15 years has been encroaching on our personal lives, right? And we all know that feeling of have to reply to an email at 10 o'clock at night or reply on weekends. And I don't think that's the way it used to be. It used to be that you went home at the end of the day and you had built-in work-life balance. and now I think what we're seeing is we're asking our folks and our teams to be working around the clock. Technology is allowing that to happen. But with the pandemic, I think the blessing in disguise of the pandemic was now it was no longer debatable that we are actually invading the home life. The business world is invading the home life. And so suddenly people got comfortable with being in their jammies, having their kids hanging on their heads. It's life, it's real. And so I think that's a blessing in disguise, is that we've all dropped a little bit of our facades. We're all doing our best in this world to juggle. Right. And I think you got to create a culture in your companies that brings the best out in folks, but allows them to be honest and talk about what they're going through and asking for time off if they need, or support where they need it. I mean, there's no secrets that mental health and substance abuse is it's a train wreck right now in this country, and it's probably still being underreported. So I think people first to us means you're a place that you can feel safe, like a family, to be real, and that you have to create the culture that's tolerant, that's supportive, because we really have broken down the barriers between business and personal lives. So that's what it means to us.
Yeah, I think too is, as you were saying, we all have to pivot in our business. So we decide whether we're changing direction or how we're going to do something different, right? So for you, it's the people first, realizing that, okay, tech companies I think probably are famous for that, is Well, I don't even think just tech companies, even manufacturing companies and that sort of industry itself perpetuates the idea of, um, long hours, get the project done, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like now we have to stop and say, okay, people are working at home generally, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, how can we support them working at home while getting their job done? And yet at the same time, they have so many more duties and things, responsibilities to look after, right? So,
Yeah, 100%. And I think I could easily say what's gone wrong with corporate cultures, and I could easily go into the educational system as well. But
right,
I think that the corporate culture and educational systems were really born, kind of in the 20s. It's a very
right.
manufacturing centric mentality, right?
Mhm.
And the reality of it is, with robotics and AI and artificial intelligence and software, people are no longer doing widget work, right? You're not
Right,
taking the widget from this side of the conveyor belt and sticking it over there.
right.
But that's really what we've taught our business leaders, to think.
Mhm,
And that's still what a lot of the business textbooks will say. And, the
mhm.
books that people hold up to, you should read this book and learn how to be a great executive. There's some jewels in there, but you still, if you read a Jack Welch book from the 90s, it's kind of sounds like the 20s a little bit.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think what if you think about where, my kids are 12 and 11, where they're going to go thrive and have careers, it's not going to be widget work. It's going to
right.
be creative. It's going to be creative work and unique problem solving, things that
Mhm,
robots can't do, right?
right,
Which again means that someone that comes in and, punches a time clock and does their job and leaves, that day's, that's going to be less and less of the future.
mhm, mhm.
But again, that means you're getting more into their personal lives, and you have to adapt how you lead. You have to adapt how you manage expectations. One of the things we're playing around with people first is actually turning off our communication systems and our emails, over the
Mhm,
weekends and
mhm,
after hours. We're very people are working from home. We let people kind of create their own
mhm,
timelines and their own calendars. We just are really trying to manage the organization more on tasks, and
mhm.
when you got to get it done, and we expect you to do it.
Right.
That's your role, but we don't have to micromanage, and we're not going to look at the clock and when you came in and when you left at the end of the day. I think those days are gone.
Yeah, yeah. So, when was your kind of wake up call when you realized that, my people matter more than me getting a project done?
Well, I had one particular employee who was an inspiration, who's been with me on 3 different startup journeys, and great person, hard worker. But he's like, I need you to talk through something with me.
Mhm,
He's like, you've always paid me well. I can't complain there,
mhm.
but I'm not sure I've ever seen the big home run that I thought startups were supposed to give me. And he's like, I just want you, if the answer is, it's not built for people like me, and, that's fine, but just tell me the answer. And I said, you know what? I don't think we are building it for the masses. I mean,
Mhm,
you give away stock options and you give away these incentives, and I've been guilty in the past of dangling
mhm,
that as a carrot.
mhm.
But the reality of it is, if most people knew how investor preferences work and, debt and all that kind of stuff paid out, most people working at startups aren't going to see the upside that they're hoping for, right?
Right.
Now you can have a Facebook and you can have an Uber, and then there's plenty to go around. But the
Mhm.
reality is, most startups aren't worth $100 billion.
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so it really made me look at that. And I am a big believer that, rising tide rises all boats. Like, if I can figure out how to make my employees get a bigger piece of the apple, then I'll be doing just fine. Right.
Right. Right.
So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then
Mhm,
as we started to look at what we wanted to build with this venture studio, everything we build, every company takes on that tone and that culture as well. So we're like, hey,
mhm,
what's going to make us very unique and give us a kind of unfair competitive advantage in the world? And all roads led back to people.
mhm, mhm.
So, people are going to be our differentiator. And they always are usually, but more so today than ever.
Right.
Then you start to say things, okay, well, can we get better people because we pay better?
Mhm.
The stats say no.
Yeah.
The research will tell you that, people need to make what they need to make, but past that, it's not a motivating factor, right?
Right.
The motivating factors are culture and how you support the folks around you, and
Right.
how you get the best out of them, how you encourage them to always be learning and always be exploring, and how do you make these things more than words? So I guess at the end of the day, it still came back to good old capitalistic greed. We want to figure out how to have a competitive advantage, but we really just do believe if you focus there and making it people first, and then all the other good stuff comes your way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that one. So I was just kind of curious. Your company, your studio is called Nobody Studios. How'd you come up with a name like that, Nobody Studios?
Yeah, it was a topic of contention in the McNally family, because my wife hated the idea of nobody, that nobody's a nobody, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with that 100%, but that was actually the reason for it, right? That we really have to be building something and building companies and ideas that are bigger than ourselves, bigger than any one personality. And there's a little bit of an anonymity to what we're doing as well. We have some great executives that are working full-time jobs somewhere else.
Right.
So that played into it. We have some folks that are moonlighting where their side hustle, and I think that, as we reached out and started building our network, and I'm very humbled by the people who've joined our journey so far, because we just have some really awesome people. But one thing started to resonate again and again, which was, I think, the pandemic really is, probably the first time in, most people's lifetimes that the entire world was facing mortality, and staring that down, right? Maybe World War II.
Yeah.
That means most people hadn't, experienced that. And when you come out of a scenario where you've stared down mortality, you tend to ask yourself things like, is what I'm doing worth it? And, is what I'm doing having an impact? And is what I'm doing going to, achieve my dreams and make me happy, and et cetera, et cetera. So we kept seeing again and again people saying, look, I'm going to change things, because what I'm doing in the future has got to get me out of bed again.
Right.
And so that also kind of became a rallying cry for us. And the nobody theme, we started feeling like we're kind of building a movement of some really talented people that want to be part of something big. And we're able to have these big lofty conversations like, okay, what does it mean to be people first? And watch people just chime in and be part of that creation process. And people come after brainstorming and say, I've never been asked that question before. Well, that's the problem. That's good. We're doing something right.
Yeah, it's always about the good conversations that we have with people and finding out what their passion is and what they want to get out of a situation, right? And that's one thing I know that it's really lacking, is people just don't want to reach out across the table and say, well, who are you, or what's your passion? What do you like to do, outside of, per se, a work,
Yeah, and we're all wired differently, right? So it's not, we're certainly not trying to recruit people with similar personality types. But we are trying to recruit people that fit into a certain type of mold. We kind of have a no asshole rule. No time for that. I really am pretty ruthless against politics. I'm pretty ruthless against talkers. I'd rather have doers. So you start to filter out some folks. I tend to think that all the best intentions around culture tend to be threatened by bad hires. But then it's also leadership, because it's leadership's job to recognize, and I think we as leaders sometimes get infatuated with a certain person's resume or what we think they might bring to the table, but then we're making the decisions the wrong way. At the end of the day, if you threaten your culture, you threaten your company. So.
So what do you mean by a bad hire? So how would you know if it's a bad hire?
Well, I think I've seen, and before I went back into venture studio, this venture, I did a lot of consulting with folks in startups. And I think a lot of leaders get it wrong by trying to be the good guy. But the people who would like to be the good guy tend to hire assholes to do the dirty work. And I think that's
movies about that.
I think that's cowardice. but I think that that's something that happens more often than people want to admit, that they don't want to be the bad guy, but they know they need a bad guy, which is opening the door to that culture, right?
Right.
And it gets you out of the fact that, hey, people will follow a good leader and do amazing work, but you have to look in the mirror and make sure that you're being a good leader. And sometimes that's hard for people to do.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about, I know you have other passions than people first. It's just a part of your business. So tell us a little bit more about your passion and what you love to do the most.
Well, yeah, simply the reason why I did this is because I'm an idea person. But in my career, it was always kind of like, that was a bad word. It was actually, you got labeled wrong with like, oh, that guy's just an idea guy. And so I spent my entire career trying to fake it as an executor and got pretty good at it. But I believe that ideas are becoming more and more important with where we're going in the world. I think that technology, most people don't appreciate a paradigm shift of kind of technology. Like the internet is a great example, right?
Right.
The internet, my first startup company was an internet company in '96. I was getting customers on the internet with an AOL disk in my hand, and they had 600 baud modems back then. It would take 22 minutes for my webpage to paint.
For it to show up, yes.
Forget videos, forget audio.
There's a brochure on the line.
But if you look at what happened with the internet, right? It's basically completely matured over 25, 30 years, right? And now it affects elections, and it's affected every part of our lives, from dating to banking to there's nothing that hasn't been touched, right?
Right.
But 30 years is a long time to adapt to a paradigm shift in technology, right? I remember talking to the president of Gap stores in '97, and we're trying to get him to do something with our e-commerce software, and he said, oh, we got the internet figured out. It's just going to be a place that our customers are going to go print coupons and come into our stores. And the reality is, he probably didn't see the light. He probably retired. Right? We had 30 years of a new generation to kind of come on board. My point there is, our fundamental belief is that there'll be 10 paradigm shifts of that magnitude in the next 20, 30 years.
Right.
And you might have 5 to 10 years to adapt to them, which means you don't have the chance for the next generation to grow up. You don't have a chance. Companies are going to be destroyed by paradigm shifts that are going to make them basically obsolete. So that, again, that belief system allows me to uncover my ideation and say, I think ideas are the big future of commerce. There are going to be some very disruptive ideas that come along. It wasn't that we had any problems getting around 10 years ago before Uber. But it's a heck of a lot easier today. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's, allowing ourselves to be passionate about ideas and brainstorming and building a culture that allows that to happen, and recruiting people that think like that or are better at it than me. That's my real passion, and have a blast at it.
Yeah, I was on your site last night, just kind of getting a feel of who you are and what you do. And I noticed several new apps or services that you're going to be offering, or you're just in the middle of launching, I would assume. So I was just, it's like Nobody's Studios. Okay. So Nobody's Studios is really just about a collaborative, creative incubator that is inviting people to come and play, share their ideas, and see what you guys can create together, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. And we're having fun at it. It's we're pretty equal opportunity innovators. We do a lot of different things in lots of different industries, but we tend to look at things that have the ability to grow fast, products where we can get them in the market within a year.
Right.
We're not looking for things that are going to be $30 million investments and 7 years of R&D.
Yeah.
We're looking for things that are kind of quicker hits.
Yeah.
And we're also looking for things that, all things being equal, can have a positive impact on the world.
Right.
And so we tend to, some of the things we're getting involved in are where people have had personal pain or, personal suffering or personal frustration within the executive team. We're like, it can be better. Let's figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. My thing is putting kindness on the stock exchange. or maybe take it IPO. I don't know. I'm still playing with that, but it's just that I just firmly believe that I've been in business for a long time now. And from what I just come to believe that if people put money into it, they're more invested in it. So I don't know if that's true, but just from what I've seen and done. And so the idea, I know is people just say, oh, what's that got to do with business? Who wants to do that? But without it, you have a very toxic environment. So anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And going back to, I don't mean to be picking on Jack Welch, but I think
he was great in his time, but now you can't take forward. You can take forward a few of his ideas, but you can't take all of it now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's aged.
I just think he's the easy one to latch on to and point to an older generation of business thinking.
Right.
But that line of thinking came up with taglines like, if you want a friend, get a dog. And that's kind of what I remember hearing from my leaders, as I was growing. And people trying to coach me on being a better leader. They're like, oh, you just want to be too friendly with people. I'm like, I'm straight and I'm direct, but we work too hard to not like each other.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big part of it. At the end of the day, I like being challenged by different types of people. I certainly have my passions and my strong beliefs, but I have strong beliefs loosely held. I like to be challenged. I like to be debating. I like to learn, a lot of my thinking and views of the world are, dramatically different than, 16-year-old Mark, or 25-year-old Mark. There's no doubt about it. But it's because you have to always be learning. And so my people and the people I'm lucky enough to attract to our journey, they're part of my improvement and development as well. So
Right. Yeah, because who we become is who we attract, or who wants to hang out with us, or that we want to hang out with them. They may want to hang out with us, but necessarily that we want to hang out with them, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I like your idea about kindness on the stock exchange. One of the things we've been playing with, in our idea lab, where we're brainstorming ideas, is how do you make all the platitudes and all the nice statements, and how do you make them more concrete, right? How do you make them bigger commitments?
Right.
And right now, again, I think it's easy. People are look at HR departments, and people will look at what is the crisis of the year or crisis of the the decade, and let's make sure we do a press release on that, right? But they're just check boxes for the most part, right?
Yeah.
How do you actually fundamentally change? And again, my passion is in innovation and ideation, and how that's going to really destroy a lot of companies in the next couple of years. And I think that their savior will be culture. You're going to have to really break companies into way more agile, independent, risk-taking organizations that maybe just benefit from a larger brand or capital resources. But I think you're going to have to dissect big companies down into much smaller units and give them a lot more autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be your final say as we wrap up this call about what your message is and what kind of impact you want to make in your business or in the world today?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, one of the things that's near and dear to my heart is just that everybody is got something they're struggling with, whether it be them personally or something really close to them. And if you can find the place to be coming from there, you'll tend to be a lot less judgmental, a lot less friction or abrasiveness. And I think that you have to give people.
Your voice disappeared. Oh, I lost him. Sorry, I didn't hear your voice. Anyway, but thank you. I'll mark down what you just said, because your voice just went.
Okay.
So you want to repeat that last sentence, because your voice disappeared.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
Yeah, just I believe if you can always appreciate that everybody's struggling with something, and you come at it with that point of view, then you're going to have a lot less friction, a lot less abrasiveness in the workplace, and create environments where people can do their best work and where people want to work. And I don't think that's going to be an option in the future. Hopefully a few of us will get ahead of the curve and will benefit from being ahead of the curve, but in the future, it won't be an option.
Yeah, great. Great. Well, thank you, Mark, so much for joining me today. I so much
Yeah.
appreciate your honesty, your integrity, and I'm sure that people will likely want to reach out to you and find out a little bit more about what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that would be great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Mari-Lyn, thanks for what you do, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Mark.
All right.
And I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for following. Please subscribe to the show. Just give it a quick like or subscribe. And love to hear from you, some feedback or comments. That'd be great. And in closing, just be kind to each other because that's all we have in this world. So take care of each other. Thank you. Okay.